Hello everybody, this is JoAnn speaking here, and welcome to another lore video involving my series the Hadrosaur. Last time, I went over gifted mortals and witches. For this one, I'm going to be talking about Knawres the Empty. It will go over who he is, his origin story, his powers, and the current events. Now, I've said this before in my previous lore video, but I'll say it again. Please keep in mind that this series does not take place on Earth. It takes place on a fictional planet far away from our solar system called Aliene. And also, this video contains spoilers for the Hadrosaur episode 14. If you wish to avoid spoilers, then you should probably save this video for when you come back from watching that episode. Without further ado, let us begin. Knawres the Empty is a large, supernatural, and dangerous entity with a strong desire to hunt victims down and consume their flesh. On planet Aliene, he resides on an island called Isla Invierno, name meaning Winter Island. He's an evil and sadistic creature. It doesn't matter to him if the victim is a herbivore, carnivore, or a pterosaur. The moment you encounter him, you are in grave danger. The reason why Knawres is also called the Empty is because despite him consuming flesh, Knawres retains the appearance of an emaciated creature. In fact, to the residents of Isla Invierno, he represents undying hunger. Knawres made his debut in the Hadrosaur episode 14, where he tried numerous times to kill Amber. Why? Because he sees Amber as a threat due to her possessing a fractured soul of one of the primordial sisters, and he also doesn't want Amber to release the ethereals, aka the gods and goddesses of Aliene. Also, before I continue, here's a few sounds that show what Knawres sounds like. If there was an alternate world where the Hadrosaur has spoken dialogue, Knawres would definitely be able to talk, but given his nature, it would obviously sound like something out of anybody's nightmares. Knawres is nocturnal, meaning he prefers to come out at night. There are very rare occurrences where he would appear shortly before the sun is completely set for the evening. He usually appears in any kind of forest on Isla Invierno. Any unfortunate dinosaur who comes across Knawres will be caught and eaten by him, unless they were able to escape on time. However, there are cases where Knawres will tempt and corrupt victims. I will talk about how that works once I get to the corruption section. Also, Knawres is sadistic, and he would occasionally take his dead victims and leave them on display like a sick decoration for others to see in the rising mornings in order to scare them. For example, in episode 14 of the Hadrosaur, a group of pachyrhinosaurs came across a mangled corpse of one of Knawres' victims on a tree. Naturally, they were traumatized. Unfortunately, Amber also saw what happened, and she ended up throwing up as a result. A lot of dinosaurs avoid being alone in the woods at night due to intense fear of this entity. To look at the origin of this guy, we need to start things off by going back to the time where the birth of planet Aliene was somewhat still fresh. Isla Invierno used to be a much larger piece of land attached to the mainland, although it used to be called the Land of Cold Death because times were rough for that place back then due to numerous residents dealing with unforgiving cold and starvation, leading to death. But then it gets worse. Corpses of those who fell began to rise with the drive of undying hunger and start to attack the living. Then when things started to get more worse, two gifted mortals appeared. One was a Cryolophosaurus named Alaric, while the other one is a pachyrhinosaur named Bianca. Gifted with powers by Nyeva, the goddess of ice, these two dinosaurs were able to fight and slay the walking corpses. However, trouble wasn't over yet. The undead were put down, but the corrupted life forces from these bodies leaked out. Alaric and Bianca watched in shock as the life forces combined into a huge mass, forming into a shape of a ghostly figure with a grotesque-looking ceratopsian skull for a head. and that figure was Knawres the Empty. After Knawres roared in rage at the two gifted mortals, the sun started to come up, causing Knawres to scream in fear and vanish. Soon after, the land of cold death broke away from the mainland and decreased in size. It is no longer a land of mass casualties, but a stabilized place residents can live on called Isla Invierno. It was originally thought that Knawres was defeated when he vanished. However, that would soon change. And that's where Flint, the Aguaceratops, comes in. This ceratopsian used to live on the mainland until some unfortunate circumstances caused him to get washed up on Isla Invierno. After living on that island for a while, he caught the attention of Knawres the Empty. Since his birth, Knawres longed for a physical body, and he saw Flint as the perfect vessel. Eventually, poor Flint would behave erratically as a result of Knawres' corruption. Residents of Isla Invierno were naturally terrified of Flint's behavior and have no clue what was happening to him. The final straw was when Flint, in an act of madness, bit a dinosaur's tail off and devoured it. After briefly regaining himself and seeing what he's done, he fled into the forest to keep himself away from everyone. This would be the last time anyone would see Flint alive, as eventually he would die from the effects of Knawres and starvation. His body would become mummified as time goes on. Sometime after, something disturbing happened. This mummy began to shift and crack just like an egg before it burst open. A large creature covered in black blood has risen from the mummified body, and it's none other than Knawres the Empty. Flint is long gone, only Knawres remains. After his emergence, Knawres the Empty started slaughtering innocent bystanders who were unfortunate enough to be present while he was breaking out of the mummified body of Flint. He also started to prepare to unleash his full power to where it could spread to all the lands of planet Alieny and corrupt the innocent into his underlings. This potential global threat caught the attention of one of the ethereals, named Naeva, the goddess of ice. She confronts Knawres and demanded him to stop and bow before her. But of course, Knawres refused. Instead, he attempts to challenge her, but the goddess casts a power on him that would not only weaken him, but also bind him on Isla Invierno and prevent him from ever leaving it. Even when Knawres isn't active in broad daylight, there is still a presence of him on Isla Invierno. He preys on victims who are starving and desperate. The victim could have gotten lost or couldn't find their way home, they had no way to get some food, or perhaps they have become trapped. Living in a snowy and icy land can be tough at times. The victims are usually herbivores, but there were occasionally carnivores who fell victim to the corruption. Pterosaur victims are extremely rare. Those who are starving and desperate are targeted by Knawres, and they will begin hearing his voice calling to them, beckoning them to embrace their will to survive and avoid death. When the victims' minds become corrupted slowly but surely, they will experience paranoia and slowly start to crave the desire to consume flesh of other dinosaurs in order to not die. In some cases, they will begin to attack other dinosaurs for their flesh. For example, Oakland the Stygimoloch got to the point where he attacked his own herd members when the corruption was starting to get to his head. In other cases, victims can also suffer from hallucinations as well. Hallucinations do vary. They can include shadowy creatures with claws and purple eyes, sharp icicles piercing from the victim's abdomen, creatures with whited out eyes staring out from behind the trees, or flashing images of Knawres' face staring right into the eyes of the victim. An example, a Lianosaura named Ren hallucinated a shadowy figure grabbing his neck. During his futile attempt to get the creature off of him, Ren tore out his own feathers around his neck and head. Victims of Knawres will eventually become corrupted into Wendigos and submit to him. Immortality in exchange for undying hunger and blind servitude to the Empty. It is possible for victims to fight off getting turned, but it can be hard. Tequila the Edmontosaurus has fought really hard against the corrupting force and beckoning words of Knawres, but she sadly ultimately failed, and fighting too hard resulted in her stretching her jaw too much, causing damage. Lucien the Nidosaurus was one of the lucky ones who escaped being corrupted. However, there is more to the story. When Lucien was a hatchling, he and his father Oris had an encounter with Knawres, but Oris was able to fend the creature off. Time goes by, and Lucien was on his way to become an adult, but tragedy sadly struck when at some point his father Oris became corrupted into a Wendigo by Knawres the Empty. When Lucien refused to join his side, Knawres forced Oris to attack his own son. After a tough fight, Lucien was able to put his father down and set him free. This Nanuxsaurus would later on almost meet the same fate as his father, but was able to escape. To this day, Lucien held a personal vendetta against Knawres the Empty. Decapitation, a direct stab through the heart, and fire can ultimately kill a Wendigo and set the victim free. Ren, as a Wendigo, barely missed getting stabbed in the heart. While he was stabbed through the chest and back by obsidian amber, she missed the heart, hence why Ren was still active until Lucien decapitated him. If you stab a Wendigo in the head, it will only stun it for a bit. Wendigos will die if they are exposed to fire with enough time. In fact, a Wendigo getting thrown in fire or falling in it is enough to put it out because fire can cleanse some evil essence. As shown in the Hadrosaur episode 14, Knawres has other abilities besides corruption of some of his victims, but of course he has some weaknesses too. He can disappear and reappear, but only does that when he comes out at night or when he disappears before the sun comes out. Despite the lack of muscle, Knawres is physically strong and has durability. He can sense those who possess a type of power, hence why he was able to find Amber in her igloo. Knawres can also use electricity, but he only uses it when he's angry and wants to torture someone with pain. Although keep in mind that it's not fatal, hence why Amber's still alive after Knawres shocked her. He can also take control of his Wendigo underlings through the mind if they showed hesitation to follow orders. Another ability Knawres has is levitation, but he can only levitate if he was in his other form, which is what residents call it his true physical form. Last but not least, Knawres the Empty is immortal and can't truly die. He can be incapacitated and his physical form can be destroyed, but he will just regenerate, which can take days or even weeks. During those moments where Knawres is focusing on regenerating himself, residents are for now safe from him. And as for weaknesses, his eyes are sensitive. If you throw a snowball at him and manage to hit him in the eye, he will not like that. Stabbing his eyes will also work, but it won't be permanent damage since he will just regenerate his eyes. Knawres, just like his Wendigo underlings, can be damaged by fire, although he's more tolerant with it. If he's in his true physical form, he is more vulnerable to ghosts paralyzing his body and causing excruciating pain, but please keep in mind that ghosts cannot take possession of him. Last but not least, stabbing Knawres in the heart will incapacitate him back into his ghost form, but as mentioned before, he can regenerate. As for the question on if he needed another vessel to regain his physical form, the answer is no. Since he already used one, he's gained an ability to just regenerate to the way he was before. Oh, and a little fun fact. 50 years before the events of the Hadrosaur, he met Orpheus once and was offered a place at his side. However, Knawres refused to join him because 1. He saw this corrupted Coronosaurus as a threat, and 2. He saw the revenants of Orpheus as intruders in his territory. Last but certainly not least, with some current events for now, Knawres was temporarily destroyed after Lucien stabbed him through the heart, and he is currently regenerating. As mentioned before, it can take days or weeks. As for the question on him possibly returning for the finale, well, so far it is currently unknown. And that concludes this lore video on Knawres the Empty from the Hadrosaur. As said before, there will be more videos like this one as time goes on. Hope you guys have a great day. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see y'all later in another video. Last time I went over gifted mortals and witches. And there's a freaking chopper. I don't know if the microphone can pick that up, but... Really? Another ability Knawres... I'm gonna wait for this Helicopter to shut up first. But he can only levitate if he was in his other form, which... Oh my gosh, more helicopters. No.